What do games and rain gardens have in common? A fair question asked by an inquisitive student at the beginning of a 7-month-long journey of teaching the concept of systems now echoed in my mind as I placed a limestone block to complete a rough iteration of the perimeter of a new garden being built on that student's school grounds. It all began with an introduction to systems in everyday life, schools, roads, and so on, then progressed to biomes, gardens, and finally settling upon games. These last two topics became the focus of 2 project-based lessons that would take place over the span of the school year and facilitate the learner's practice and comprehension of collaboration, design, and systems. Across both semesters, the game projects had been proceeding well, with each student group familiarizing themselves with the basic concepts of game design and each phase of game development. To simplify the lessons, I had the students work together to develop board games and had them focus on 7 fundamental aspects of a game. These elements include theme, that which serves as the central and unifying ideal or principle; space, the imaginary and physical areas within which the game takes place; goal, how one can win the game; challenge, that which is between the player and the goal; mechanics, the actions the player is repeating during play; components, the pieces that are necessary for play; rules, how the play is structured. Once the groups had these elements loosely defined, they then would move on to a streamlined version of each phase of game development, the order of which includes ideation, the discussion and drafting of ideas, followed by the assignment of group roles; prototyping, the implementation of those ideas into a rough and playable form; testing, determining what works and what does not by playing and watching others play; production, agreeing on the definition of done before finalizing each element of the game; launch, making the game available for others to play. Game development is tumultuous and challenging by admission of most adults who have dedicated their careers to game creation, let alone for a classroom of 6 and 7-year-olds. This had been a time of trials and tribulations to be sure, as many of the learners had not yet worked in groups with their classmates on a big project over a long span of time. In many instances, I played the role of mediator amongst heated discussions and disagreements, often calling on a deciding vote and, in the event of a tie, having the disagreeing parties choose between a game of rock, paper, scissors or the roll of a die to determine the outcome. Little by little, the need for my mediation decreased as they began working more efficiently and effectively as a cohesive unit. By the end of the project timeline, many of them stood proud and elated when presenting the final product, and a mixture of laughs and enthusiastic discussion could be heard throughout the classroom as they gathered round to play each other's games. A similar cacophony of excited shouts snapped my attention up from my reminiscing to see my wife and teacher of the class guide her students to form a line where she handed out small planter buckets for them to fill with river rock. She then instructed them to carry their filled buckets to where I awaited, at the garden center, which had been dug down several feet to accommodate rainwater overflow from the school's rainwater capture tanks. The river rock, being enthusiastically dumped by each student before they hurriedly returned to refill their buckets, would reinforce the interior structure of the water catchment, thereby preventing the catchment's sloping, curved walls from being eroded by excessive rainfall, and would provide a solid foundation for people to walk upon while tending to each plant within the garden. Meanwhile, a half-dozen other students gathered twigs, sticks, and limbs that had fallen from several trees scattered about the school grounds before walking briskly over to add their findings to a slowly growing pile of the wood material. There, 2 learners sat on either side, barely taller than the wood pile between them, diligently distributing material from the pile into the interior of the garden. The wood's purpose is multifaceted, serving as an extra barrier along the garden's interior edge, a sponge to soak up water, an insulating mass providing warmth to plant roots and microbiology, and a source of nutrients added to the soil following decomposition. The limestone I placed along the garden's edge would contain the river rock within the catchment and prevent soil erosion by supporting the mounds of earth containing the garden's plants. These mounds were designed to stand tall within the garden's border and would be filled with wood, other plant material, compost, soil, and topped off with mulch to provide a solid and diverse soil composition that could withstand most elemental pressures of the seasons. This in turn would ensure that the soil would remain alive with microbiological activity that then would increase the survivability and growth rate of each plant. As the day progressed and shadows grew long, it was time to call it a day. Though the garden would require another day's work and more material to finish, the learners could not have been happier with what they had built together thus far. The following day, the garden would be completed in a matter of hours thanks to the help of a couple of parent volunteers. With the contribution of their efforts, we were able to make swift work of the more laborious tasks of shoveling, moving, and placing larger amounts of material. Upon its completion, the children gathered round the garden to celebrate, marvel at the various elements of its design, and provide detailed explanations to the parent volunteers on each section of the garden's build, often without prompting. Standing there, muscles aching slightly as I leaned on a grime-covered shovel to take in the scene with a wide grin stretched across my face, I reflected on the question that had been bouncing around in my head the previous morning. What do games and rain gardens have in common? I suppose one could articulate the parallels between games and rain gardens as complex systems by analyzing the processes of design, planning, development, and arrangement of the individual pieces to form a functional whole. But in that moment, as the strengthened bonds of trust and camaraderie from completing the daunting projects were on full display, another answer lay clearly in my mind. Perhaps now, for you, dear listener, it does as well.